Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Yeah, we're going to get to the Trump stuff. Yeah, I know everybody's doing the Trump stuff. Everybody talking about the former guy and his legal woes, and should we be doing this or shouldn't we, or oh, is this a problem? Yeah, it's a problem, and we're going to get to all of that. But I got to tell you, my mind was somewhere else all day today. And I know this is the biggest story in democracy, and I know everybody should. I get it. It's a big deal. But I had a listener send me this Carl Sagan quote. And look, I remember, I'll tell you how old I'm feeling old. For those who don't know, Carl Sagan was, this famed astronomer, all over the place in the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. He was being interviewed by billionaire TV mogul Ted Turner, because you remember Ted owned CNN. So he was doing an interview on CNN of Carl Sagan, are you a socialist? And I remember this back in 89. And I remember going, I don't like Ted Turner very much. But it's one of these things that, and as I said, it's been around for a while, and I've seen it pop up, and I guess it's popping up again, and it's probably a good thing. But I 100% agreed with Carl Sagan back in 89, as I do today. And he said, look, what is a socialist? He said, I believe government has a responsibility to care for people. He says, I'm talking about making people self-reliant, people able to take care of themselves. There are countries which are perfectly able to do that. The United States is an extremely rich country. It's perfectly able to do that. It chooses not to. It chooses to have homeless people. He says we're the 19th in the world in infant mortality. 18 other countries save the lives of babies better than we do. And he asked the question, how come? And it's choice. We make these decisions. And he pointed out something that was contentious back in 89. Star Wars, not the TV show, not the movie, but the Reagan era, hey, we're going to have missile defense domes and lasers and all kind of stuff. And they spent an enormous amount of money. And he said, look, we've already spent $20 million on it. And they're probably going to spend $1 trillion. And they did. That came out of your Social Security. He said, think of what that money could be used for education, to help, to bring people up to a sense of self-confidence was his point. And he said, to improve not just the happiness of people in America, but their economic standing. To improve the competitiveness of the U.S. compared to other countries, we are using our money for the wrong stuff. And again, this idea, not just the happiness of people, but for the entire country, for society. And, my mind was just all over this today, thinking about the old Hobbes quote, that life outside of society is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And how, as we're tearing apart, as we're being ripped apart on purpose to keep us pitted against each other so that we can be robbed blind, and the resources that we have misused again and again and again, I started I'm in this spot going, yeah, the Trump thing's important. And I'm going to get to that. But this, to me, is the central issue of where we are. The central issue of being part of a society that cares for the least among us, the most vulnerable. And again, the people who tell us we're a Christian nation, well, show me in your policy. Don't tell me how pious you are. Don't tell me how much you believe. Show me. Show me the policy. And look, when they overturned Roe, the religious right was all just, all wadded up and tingly in the panties and happy. But where were the policies to follow up on this, to go, okay, now we're going to force all these people to have children. We're going to force poor people to have a bunch of children that they can't afford. Great. Where's the policy to help? And I haven't seen that. I've seen none of it because these people don't care. And what's frustrating to me is we can have a society that is much, much better. We can do better. We can be better. And what's frustrating to me, and I was just reading this, and it's it's been a couple of months since this study came out. But this moneyzine.com site, they did a survey of people who, how happy are you in your job? How happy are you with your income? What income would you need to be happy? Because you may remember a number of years ago, there was a Nobel Prize winning study done that said, hey, after 75 grand, life doesn't get much better. Having all kinds of money doesn't make your life that much better after 75 grand. Because, at 75 grand, and I think this was like 2010, you could afford a decent residence. You could afford a decent car. You could take a vacation occasionally. You could have the decent things in life. You could have that Leave It to Beaver kind of existence that one income could support a family, and you could live a good life, have, see movies an hour, then do other things other than just exist. And they wanted to know, is that reality? And they went into the workforce and they asked people, what do you do? How much you make? And, what do you need? And that 75 number has jumped up to about 100 grand, people are saying, to be happy. Need 100 grand to be happy. And, they went through and talked about the different industries and how far they are from that number of being happy. For instance, retail workers are the poorest paid workers around. To get to that 100 grand level, they need like a 400% increase in their salaries. And it's no wonder that they have such a high turnover rate. Something like 60-70% of people in retail end up leaving for another crummy job chasing nickels. And as I'm going through this, my mind is in this place of, back when I was in high school civics class, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. This idea that you can pursue your happiness, and government could be there to help with smart policy that puts guardrails to capitalism so that we don't end up where we are in this moment, where you've got gazillionaires who have more money than 10 generations forward are ever going to be able to spend. And yet we've got kids growing up in the same housing project that I grew up in, not having anything to eat tonight. There is something enormously wrong, and I agree with Carl Sagan on this. Something enormously wrong in how we spend our money. And it came back to me as I was thinking about, my own journey and my own life, and being fortunate enough, after I got out of college, I got a job working in the freight industry, which, back in the late 80s was making about $18 an hour at the top, or 18 and some change. So I did that, went over to the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They've got this cool inflation calculator to where you can go back in time and you can go, hey, if I made $18 an hour in 1987, what would that be in today's dollars? And it'd be almost $50 an hour in today's dollars. Yeah, almost $50 an hour. I know that job right now pays just $30. So that $20 an hour difference, and I would argue that that's the difference between making a reasonable living and having a good living, being happy. Where did that $20 go? That $20 an hour, 40 hours a week, $800, where did that money go? And we know it went to the very wealthy, it went to the shareholders, it went to our investor class. And how did that happen? And you know where I'm going with this, because I say this all the time. We allowed politicians to push really bad policy. We allowed politicians to allow corporate America to beat up on organized labor and collective bargaining. And we went for a tax code that said, no, you are the smart one. You know what to do with the money much better than the collective of society. No, you keep it. You keep it. You know what to do with it. And the thing is they did. The individual at the top knows exactly what to do with the money, and that is make more money for themselves. But how does that help society? How does that help us move into that direction of of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Well, you could pursue your happiness. Yeah, but it's kind of hard when the entire system is being rigged against your ability to make a reasonable wage because they're colluding. I know, oh, you can't say that. Okay, they're coordinating. We'll use a different C word. And the sad reality is what happens is people's lives get much more difficult. And one of the things from this study that came out is going, look, people don't have the kind of money that they need to be able to do the things that they need. They look, they do this by cutting going on vacation. They cut it by avoiding social outings, by having weddings, and they do it by tightening the belt. And what does that mean? Not just for the individual's happiness, but for society. And I know we don't ever in this country want to talk about the good of the society, of the commons, and what we have all in this. No, we can't talk about that because that's socialism. And I've been accused of being a socialist more than once, of which I don't particularly say I am. But I do think some social policies for the good of everyone is smart policy and something we as voting people, especially in the working class, should probably want. So this is where my mind was today, and I'm just I'm in this weird spot. But I want to hear your thoughts on this. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
And I go back to this, when I got out of college back in the late 80s, the reality is that the job that I got, a menial manual labor job, was paying close to $100,000 a year. And they've destroyed that. Massive redistribution of wealth is what we have seen. Let's go to the phones. We got Kurt from Akron on line one. Kurt, how you doing today?
Well, good evening, Rick, and I just want to tell you I enjoyed your monologue there that you talked about, and it got me thinking. Remember the old TV show Dennis the Menace before you and I were even thought of?
Yep.
Okay, there was an episode where they were talking about the space program, which at that time would have been the Mercury program, the beginning of the space program under Kennedy. You know how they supported the space program, at least according to this, so take it for what it's worth? You know how they did that?
No, how'd they do it?
Okay. The kids actually took their allowances, what little allowances they had, which would have been a lot of money in those days when you adjust for inflation, and they bought trading stamps, or they bought, like savings bonds to help fund the space program. That's what we lost in 1981 when we got Ronald Reagan. We stopped being a community of the commons where we're all in this together, and we stopped investing in big dreaming, we stopped investing in things that we were dreaming of, like going to the moon and, helping to create technology that, in the 1960s seemed like a dream that we're living in reality. Science fiction became science fact because of all that investment of the commons working together. You were talking about you made $18 an hour. My dad started working at the Timken Company back in 1973 after he got out of the Marine Corps. He started out making $250 a week, all right, in 1973.
Right.
He thought he owned the world. We had a house. He bought a brand new 1976 Trans Am, fully loaded, for $5,000 out the door. We took vacations. We had the television. We had all the gadgets and stuff because they were affordable. And, I can remember my sister was at Kent State, and I was getting ready to go to Kent State. And my brother was so worried about my mom and dad's finances. And my brother couldn't have been more than maybe 11, 12 years old at the time. And we're talking 1995. And at that time, my dad actually had to sit him down and explain to him economics, and said something to the effect of, what a family of 5 today is considered to be fiscally affluent. Do you remember what it was in 1995?
I don't.
$75,000 for a family of 5 to be considered fiscally affluent at that time.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, though, if I can cut you off? Because I just went to the magic calculator over at the BLS. That $200 a week that he was making back in
250.
250. But that's even more. That $250 a week that he was making back then was close to $1,800 today a week. Stop and think about that. That's almost $100,000 a year.
Well, and by the time he retired in 2009, he was making over $100,000 a year.
Yeah,
working in a union job.
Yep.
And it's just, we need to start investing in people. But my question to you is, and I'm sorry I went long with that little history lesson, is how do you convince 2.5 generations that have grown up under trickle-down economics that they don't know anything different over the past 40 years? And some people actually made their fortune under trickle-down economics. How do you convince our generation, the Gen Xers and the millennials and the early Gen Zers, how do you convince them that trickle-down is not the way to go and Bidenomics is the way to go?
I think you tell the story you just told about your father. I think the more we realize how the economy used to be and how it used to work for working people, because we had a strong labor movement that demanded a fair share of the wealth that was created. I think the more we tell these stories, because look, people are struggling. I mean, the numbers are out there. People are working longer and harder. It no longer takes one income or two incomes for a family to survive. Now we're pushing kids into the workplace. The argument, are we at the final stage of capitalism? You start looking at this, and people are at some point have to raise their head and go, there's got to be a better way.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate the thoughts, and great story, Kurt. Thanks so much. But no, I mean, the numbers that Kurt just laid out there, I mean, right to my point, his father in 1973 made $250 a week, which, again, the economic wizardry over at the BLS calculator, and you could take a look at it yourself, comes up to $1,790 a week. Could you live a decent life today on $1,790 a week? Could you? I think you can. It's more than I make. But this is what a strong labor movement did. And it came with health care. It came with retirement security. It came with days off, paid days off, vacations. Yeah, I mean, total different environment than where we are today, which is, you could be a gig worker. You're on your own. But that is the question, isn't it, Kurt? How do we get them? Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on too. Alice, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm getting there. What's on your mind?
What I wanted to say is this. We keep hearing from the Republicans and the right wing, anything that seems to be for the benefit of the people, they start screaming, socialism, communism. They don't even know what the meaning of the words are.
They know it's an ism.
Basically means, but this is for you people out there listening. Communism means the government owns everything. Socialism means that the people supposedly own everything and the government basically gets a share. And another thing, they scream all the time, well, look what it's doing to Europe. Not really. They still have millionaires and billionaires there, not as many as we do here in the States or in Saudi Arabia. But I think it's Norway. The minimum wage there is $25 an hour. And I was discussing this with one of my right-wing people, and they they were saying, yeah, but McDonald's is probably. I'm like, no, actually, a hamburger is pretty much the food is the same price as it's here in America. It's just the money is divided more equally. So, the problem is people are screaming. They don't know what words mean. We see that with the right wing all the time. They use words. They don't know what they mean to make up their own meaning. And again, that goes back to ignorance. So
they love
there
the poorly
you are.
educated.
Have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. Love the poorly educated. Make up our own words. But this, I don't want to beat up on people because, the reality is we've been force-fed this outrage candy for so long. And the reason I didn't start with Trump today is because, look, this is the important stuff. Yeah, democracy, wildly important. And yes, I'm not going to argue that is the important issue of our moment. But everybody else is talking about that too. Nobody talks about the economic well-being of the working class. Nobody talks about, protecting people on the job. And I say it all the time. Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do. I don't care what they say. I don't care about the flowery language or the best words. Just look at what they do. I know what Joe Biden's doing. He's investing in infrastructure. We're reshoring manufacturing. He's doing the work. Jelly Bucket Joe is showing up, doing the work. But what's the grand old party doing? What work are they doing? Well, I saw their budget, and I think I talked about this earlier last month. They want to gut everything our government does. I was looking at some numbers they want to cut OSHA. Because, we just had, the president came out and said we should have, tell people about, there's protections for working in heat. Yeah, good luck on that. OSHA is supposed to enforce a lot of this stuff. Now, what's interesting is, right now, according to the AFL-CIO, it would take OSHA 190 years to inspect every workplace in this country with their current staff. Only 190 years. So I hope you feel safer. But what the Republicans want to do is they want to gut their funding even further, cut it by 15%, which would then make it even worse. And the estimate is probably about 300 years before they could inspect every workplace in the country. And isn't that wonderful? Now, again, which side are you on in this? Are you on the side of the worker who needs protection or the owner who, these job-killing regulations are making me tired? Which side? Republicans are always going to be on the side of big business because they don't want these onerous rules that protect you at work. The Mine Safety and Health Administration, they're facing a 29% cut thanks to the Republicans. And there's a war on coal, didn't you know? Never mind the war on the coal miners. No, that's not a real thing. And again, you're talking about cutting the one agency that's supposed to keep them safe. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, they're the ones who do all the workplace safety and health research. They're the research folks. They're slashing their budget by 32%. The Office of Solicitor in the Department of Labor, they want to cut their budget by 25%. You get this sense of what's going on here? The National Labor Relations Board, they want to gut by a third. You get the sense of how they want to gut the one organization in our government that protects working people? You getting a sense? Because again, I go back to Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do. And here's the thing. That budget doesn't stand a snowball's chance in passing. That's their messaging priority. Think about that. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day striking Teamsters in Minneapolis defied martial law. They stopped scab trucks, forcing the release of their strike leaders. Armed with bayonets and machine guns, the National Guard had patrolled the streets for nearly a week. They seized scores of strikers and union leaders and threw them into military stockades. Drivers were outraged. They defied Governor Olson and Major General Walsh, who, on behalf of the Citizens Alliance and trucking bosses, were determined to break the strike. Soon after strikers were imprisoned, drivers began chasing scab trucks across the city. Multiple reports poured in of picketers forcing trucks to stop. Some unloaded their cargo onto bridges. Others chased, captured, and damaged the scab trucks. Strikers ripped ignition wires out, forced scabs from the wheel, and then disappeared before police and the National Guard could arrive to retaliate. In just 3 hours, strikers had overturned nearly 70 trucks. Unable to stop the superior force of striking drivers, Bill Brown, Vincent, and Miles Dunn were ordered unconditionally released from the military stockades. Now, employers, the governor, and other strike-breaking agencies were eager to propose peace to federal mediators. But they proposed to scrap the terms of their earlier May agreement. In response, the leaders of Local 574 issued a general strike call. In it, they asked, quote, "Is there one man so blind as not to see that if 574 is allowed to go down to defeat under the brutal hammering of military despotism, the whole labor movement of the city will have been dealt a mortal blow? Union men, brothers, sisters, fellow workers, what are you going to do about it? We appeal to you for solidarity." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Senator Tom Cotton, a far-out right-winger, is to good public policy what a boll weevil is to a good cotton crop. Totally destructive. But he is politically candid. Rather than disguising his racial bigotry, for example, Tom flaunts it, as he did last month in an open letter to the retail giant Target. While the senator is usually a devoted corporate-hugging Republican, he lashed out at Target for business policies that he furiously condemns as racially discriminatory against white people. What popped Tom's cork was the chain's pledge to increase the number of black people it hires by 20%. Holy Dixieland, wailed Cotton. Hiring more of them means fewer jobs for us white people. He insisted that Caucasians had the right to take any and all of Target's jobs. Interestingly, Target's gesture to racial equality was made 3 years ago, with no peep of protest from the now infuriated Cotton. What changed? The GOP's dog-whistling tune, the new politically correct line of anti-black racists, even parroted by today's Republican Supreme Court, is that all efforts to provide racial fairness and balance are, get this, illegal racism against the white majority. So Cotton is just scurrying aboard his party's latest anti-black bandwagon, proclaiming that whites must be protected from racial progress. Not only are Tom and his ilk threatening teachers, librarians, and local governments for promoting equality, but also brand-name corporations that they claim to be woke. That is, not solely focused on profits, but also promoting a little attention to America's need for social justice. This is Jim Hightower saying, ironically, Tom's clique piously claims to be devout Christians. But guess who was supremely woke? Jesus. Tom Cotton needs to review the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus declared that those who hunger and thirst for justice are blessed.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, the one thing I give Donald Trump credit for is he leans in. He announces his own indictments. In fact, today he leaned in so far. He said, look, he's facing 561 years in prison. Send me money. I give him credit, man. He's a grifter to the end, fleecing the flock. But, I got to wonder, at some point, do the people start going, I don't know, that doesn't sound like a good investment to me. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the big indictments. And is it really 561 years in prison? I'm sure he has done the math. I'm sure he's up at 3 a.m. on the golden can, imagining what's going to happen to him. But tomorrow in Washington, D.C. and all across the country, there are events going on, the not above the law events. There's a rapid response going on the 3rd. And in D.C. on Madison Drive Northwest and 3rd Street Southwest near the Gallery. This is getting people involved and, well, making sure we hold someone accountable. And that's why I've asked Christine Wood to come talk with us. Christine is the campaign co-director with the Declaration for American Democracy Coalition. Christine, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a historic day, a historic week. Excited to be here and talk about what folks are doing across the country and in Washington, D.C. to make sure that they're, outlining and living up to the moment right now and calling for justice.
And the message is nobody is above the law. I mean, this is the thing that I think has to be hammered again and again and again. Nobody's above the law, from president to janitor. I don't care. You break the law, you're held accountable.
Of course. And, of course, this is the third indictment, as everyone watching knows. But this is one that many folks have been waiting for since January 6th, 2.5 years ago. We all tuned in to the January 6th hearings, which really laid out that Trump knew he lost the election, but still led a criminal conspiracy theory to overturn our election. So this is a serious indictment, and I think a lot of Americans have been waiting for this moment for a long time.
Now, I've had a lot of people tell me, well, aren't we going, isn't this a slippery slope? Aren't we opening up, a door that we don't really want to, because, down the road, we're going to start indicting presidents for any reason. For instance, and I'm sure you've seen this, Republicans are talking about impeaching Joe Biden. Not sure why. I don't even think they know why, but they need an impeachment. And Jesse Waters said, hey, the Fox News mouthpiece, you should do it during the Trump trial, because, hey, that would make that, see, they're both equal kind of nonsense. There's nothing equal here. This is a guy who really tried to undermine our democracy and ended 250 years of a peaceful transfer of power.
Absolutely. And I think the American people can see right through that. None of the, claims that the, extremist Republicans are pushing around Hunter Biden even measure up to classified documents, let alone overturning, an attempt to overturn the election results. And the January 6 hearings, but also the, indictment papers themselves clearly lay out that there was a multi-pronged plan to, pressure election officials to either not certify the election results, change votes, et cetera. It showed that there was a pressure campaign on even, through the Justice Department, the fake elector scandal, and then also a pressure campaign on Mike Pence. There was a series of actions that Donald Trump led with his allies to overturn a U.S. election and disenfranchise the American public. So none of the claims that are being pushed right now regarding Joe Biden have any real weight to them, let alone measuring up to an attempt to overturn U.S. democracy itself.
And that's the point here. I mean, every time someone brings up, but Hillary, but Joe, but Obama, but whoever, I always say, I don't care about but, I care about this. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about a former president who is accused of all of these crimes, of which I don't know there are very good defenses, but he's going to get his day in court like anyone else, and he should be held accountable like anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why, as you mentioned earlier, people across the country are taking action. As soon as the news of the indictment broke, we had, 70 rallies scheduled across the country to hold Donald Trump accountable and to let people across this country know where the American people stand on this issue, which is nobody is above the law, not even a president of the United States. And, the democracy belongs to all of us. And we need to show up to defend it. So that's why, we're supporting these actions that are being hosted by local folks in 70 communities from San Diego to Denver, Chicago to DC, New York, and then you mentioned in Washington, DC. So, the American people are standing up and they're making their voices clear that this is not acceptable and we need to hold people accountable, even the president. Yeah,
it's interesting. As you're talking, I just checked my email and Brad sent me an email giving me but Hillary. and here's the weird thing, and I got to address this quick because thank you, Brad. I appreciate it. And you want to email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do want to hear your thoughts. But Hillary, there were 4 years when the former guy was in the office. Had a Republican appointed DOJ guy, had all of that, all the powers, and they didn't make a case. They weren't willing. They were unable to, however you want to frame that. They didn't get to lock her up because, well, there wasn't anything really there to lock her up over.
Absolutely. There's no kind of basis for any of their claims previously. And right now there are mounds of evidence, and the amount that went into this investigation and the January 6th hearings is so much more vast in scope than any previous anything previously we've ever seen. So, the facts speak for themselves. And, the case in the indictment is very compelling. I'm sure that you've heard kind of the case that they're making, that Donald Trump essentially, in the lead up to January 6th, not just on January 6th itself, really organized a conspiracy to overturn the election. And I think nothing regarding, Hillary or other accusations compares to that. And, you mentioned earlier that you don't know what maybe the Republicans are even indicting Biden for, are looking to impeach Biden for, is it's really an impeachment in pursuit of an individual. As Donald Trump got impeached, and now they want to impeach someone as well. And it's just a tactic to deflect against the reality here that, unfortunately, the favorite of the Republican, presidential nominee has multiple, it has been multiple indictments on him. So it's a deflection tactic, and we need to call that out, and we need to stick to what's important here, which is justice for, the many counts that Trump is facing.
No, and that's the thing that's so important to point out. There are many counts here. And here's the thing. I truly believe that if it's not Donald Trump, a lot of these things go away. That former presidents of the past wouldn't have done the really outrageously stupid things that Trump did. His arrogance, I think, is what really got him into the most trouble, because we have allowed a lot of leniency for people in the past. I mean, I go back to the Reagan era. There were tons of things we could have gone after him over and didn't. George W. Bush, same thing. Lots of things. Had he just given the documents back, had he not, had the overt act, I'm going to be with you, let's go. None of this stuff would have gotten to this point, I don't think. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, what we're seeing here is truly unprecedented. I know we use that word a lot in this era, but we've truly never seen anything like it. Nothing measures up to trying to steal and overturn an election and disenfranchise democracy, itself. Typically, as you mentioned, we have seen presidents follow democratic norms, including a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, that is the American democracy at its core, and its founding was based on this peaceful transfer of power. And we've never seen anything like this. And it's important. It's important to show for the future that this won't be tolerated in the United States, that you can't do that. It's important for us to set that new precedent, and then also pass legislation to protect the franchise. We need to continue to do that in an ongoing way.
Absolutely. No, we are most certainly living history. Our great-great-great-grandchildren are going to learn about this, down the road. I mean, that's the one thing that I can be certain on. And the question is, which side of history will we be on? You're listening to The Rick Smith Show with Christine Wood. She's the campaign co-director with the Declaration for American Democracy Coalition. You can check out their website, ourfreedomsourvote.com. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Now, you talked about the election, obviously the attempt to steal the election, and the claims that there's all this fraud out there. Everywhere you look, there's fraud. There are millions. I look at Georgia, telling the Secretary of State, just find me, 14,000 votes? Claiming he won by 400,000, but just find me the 14,000 I need to win. That doesn't sound like a perfect phone call. It sounds like, old school mob kind of, hey, that's a mighty nice house you got there. Shame if something would happen to it kind of talk. This is where, talking about our ballots and our elections, I think is really important. And this has to be, in my view, extremely transparent. Yeah,
absolutely. And, right now, of course, we're talking about the behavior related to the indictment, the pressuring of Brad Raffensperger and other election officials around the election results. And of course, what happened that day on January 6th. But just for a moment, I just want to point out that there have been grave implications ever since then as well. Is we have seen now a massive mistrust of election workers in communities across this country, and that's been shown in polls, in reports from think tanks that specialize in this, and election workers themselves are quitting en masse. There was a recent, Brennan said a report that said, I think it was 1 in 5 election workers were planning to leave their jobs over a period of time. And that's because they're receiving these threats, because the environment that Trump created through the big lie has, and through vilifying election workers, has really had grave implications on our elections. And that has a ripple effect. If we have a lack of election workers and trust in our elections, it leads to people being more susceptible to misinformation. It also leads to just less functional elections, longer lines at the polls. So, we're talking, of course, about the massive issue here of Donald Trump working to overturn the U.S. election, but the damage did not stop on January 6th. We have seen grave implications across the country, from the increased mistrust in our elections to also a wave of anti-voter bills introduced across the country. So we're still seeing the impacts of this. So holding Donald Trump accountable is what we have to do immediately, but we also have to repair this damage that he and his allies have left us, our democracy, in a weaker state. But it's good to see that so many people are mobilizing, and I think these events are a testament to that folks are willing to demonstrate their support and to fight for our democracy, which is critical.
No, this is most certainly a participatory moment, and I'm hoping folks will get out to the events. If folks wanted to find an event in their neighborhood, I know you said there are like 70 of them across the country, where would they go for more information?
Oh, thanks. So you can find a website in your neighborhood at ourfreedom.com. So that's ourvote.com. Freedoms, plural.
We'll get links.
So check out that website and you'll find an event near you. This is definitely a participatory moment. Like you said, it's really important that we continue to show up, call for accountability, and, talk about the democracy that we strive to be, one that's truly for and by the people, and push back on these attempts to disenfranchise us.
And this is why I think this whole process has to be televised. Prime time, we should be holding these hearings and these court proceedings so that people can see what actually happened. Not all of the kangaroo court kind of stuff that Rudy Giuliani and his clan held here in Gettysburg or at the Four Seasons Landscaping Company. But what actually gets said under oath. And for me, there's a huge difference between Rudy on the pavement at the landscaping company and what they said in court. So for me, that's what we need to see. That's what needs to be reported on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that even, as the January 6th hearings went underway, that did such a service educating the nation on the facts of this case, to the extent that almost anyone on the street can kind of walk you through Trump's plan to overturn the election. But we need to continue talking about this and tuning in as this plays out, because this is truly a historic moment that's going to lay the groundwork for the future. It's gonna, this accountability is essential to protecting us and our democracy from anyone ever doing anything like this again.
There you go.
So folks need to tune in and continue to be present in this moment and be vocal on the need for accountability.
Ourfreedomsourvote.com is the website. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Christine Wood, I appreciate you taking time for us. I hope you'll come back and give us some information of how this is going and what's going on down the road. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Want to hear your thoughts. Will you be tuning in? Will you be paying attention to the big doings, especially as he's possibly mugshotted down in Georgia? Rick at thericksmithshow.com. I want to hear your thoughts. Back after this. Stick around.
phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1939. That was the day that the Hatch Act was enacted. The law was named after Senator Carl Hatch, a Democratic senator from New Mexico. The Hatch Act limits political activities by federal employees. One of the reasons the law was passed was due to allegations of corruption by the Works Progress Administration. The WPA was a key program of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal plan to put people back to work during the Great Depression. But critics of the WPA alleged that the program was being used as a form of political patronage, and that the jobs were exchanged as a way to secure votes for the Democratic Party. Although an investigation found no conclusive proof of the allegations, Congress decided to act to define what was appropriate political engagement for a federal employee. Except for the president and the vice president, all federal employees and employees of the District of Columbia must follow the Hatch Act guidelines. Under the Act, federal employees cannot use the authority of their job to interfere with an election. They cannot be a candidate to a public office in a partisan election. They cannot participate in political activity while at work or while wearing a government uniform or driving a government vehicle. But the Hatch Act does not completely stop federal employees from participating in our political system. If they are off the clock, federal employees can still attend political rallies, contribute money to candidates, campaign for candidates, and help register voters. Ensuring the individual rights of free speech and elections free of corruption can be a difficult balancing act, especially for the thousands who call Uncle Sam their boss. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So John sent me an email during the break. Evidently, Tarump is now the new name for Trump. John says Tarump is going to be the first president to run for president from prison, and he's going to win in a landslide. I'm not sure who Tarump is, or Tarump. He meant Trump. No, and here's the thing, John. Who knows? He may run and he may win. I'm not saying he's not going to, but he wouldn't be the first person to run for president from prison. That was Eugene V. Debs, years ago. Back during World War I believe it was. He was arrested for giving an anti-war speech, and he was locked up for it. I think he did like 10 years. I think he was sentenced to like 10 years, and I think he got over 1 million votes from prison. So wouldn't be the first, but he would be the first if he won. He'd be the first one who would win. And look, I'm not saying that that's impossible. And this is the weird part, because we've got a media structure in this country that is so screwed up that they're actually, they're playing this up. I saw CNN, and I don't know what's going on at CNN. They're losing their minds. But, the title was, Biden's still quiet after another Trump indictment. You go, what's he supposed to do? You're supposed to go out in the front lawn and go, yay, he's been indicted? No, DOJ's doing its job. Biden's got his job to do. This doesn't have anything really to do with Biden. I also love that on the Chiron, under the guests, they run that little scroll the other day that the CNN had new charges against Trump put Biden in a tricky spot. It's like they're trying to create an environment that isn't really a thing, because they need the horse race. They need people. They need people outraged. And this is the kind of propping him up that is not good for us, not good for the country. Now, can he win? I think Trump can win. I have a lot of friends who no, he's going to be a blowout. I don't know. I don't think we're the country a lot of people think we are. I think once you get into the privacy of that voting booth, people are going to vote their narrow self-interest. And right now, it's not economic. Right now, it's culture war. It's it's this sense that someone's coming for me. And I know people who are like this. They would literally bite off their nose in spite of their face. Because this is about the others. And Trump does this masterfully. He plays the victim card masterfully. And as I've always said, with him and his criming, the one thing that he always wanted is to crime, to get away with it, and he got away with it. So down the road, if he's been indicted, and those are huge wins, and I know a lot of people, we got him. Nope, didn't get him. He's indicted. That means trial. That means jury. That means there's a lot of moments. It's not until you convict. And that's a long road down. That's a long bit down the road. And he is going to milk this for everything that it's worth, both in terms of fundraising and in poor pitiful me. And look, the one thing about this country that I've always believed is, we like the underdog, even if the underdog is, well, that guy. So it's going to be a difficult road. Now, Biden has got to keep doing what Biden's doing. I saw, I forget, I think it was either a Washington Post piece. I think it was a Post piece. That Obama was at the White House for lunch and telling Biden Trump can win. Why are you reporting this? Why is that a story? Why is it even a thing? You don't think that they know that? And what would 4 years of Trump look like? What kind of, think about this for a second. Think about the kind of petty, vengeful person that Trump is. Think about the kind of policies and things that he would pursue to punish his enemies. The kind of authoritarian, dictator-like policies that he would pursue. He's got axes to grind, lots of them. Imagine that for a second. And with the moneyed interests that are behind him, going to be interesting. Speaking of moneyed interests, Elon Musk came out with a new policy over at the Twitter or the X or whatever it's going by. The blue check mark, the sign of the Musk mark, as I've been calling it. Evidently, they've now got a new policy over at Twitter/X. You can pay Elon Musk the 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever it is dollars a month to have the blue check mark, but you can hide it. You could pay for it, but you could hide it, because you could have it, but you might not want your friends to know. My mind goes to, then what's the point in having the check mark? Now, understand, I don't think this is going to work real well for the folks on the right who are paying just because they want to own the libs. It's a sign, it's a mark of, we're coming after you. It's the mark of, see it, look how dumb I am. I think this was done because what we've done here at the program is I do not follow anyone who has a blue check mark. I do not retweet anyone who has a blue check mark that I know of. I do not engage with the blue check marks unless they're a guest on the program. And even then it's limited. In fact, I block most blue check marks. For me, it's the sign, as I told Bloomberg News, it's the sign of here's your sign. So I block them. What this is this for people on the left to be able to get the benefits of having the check mark without any of your friends knowing. But here's the thing, we're gonna know. So don't do it. This is a sign of desperation. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back.
For vast parts of North America, Asia, Africa, and Europe, it's a cruel summer. For the entire planet, it is a disaster.
July 2023, the hottest month in all of recorded history. President Biden enacts new heat protections for workers, plus
the cost of living for Victorians is getting bigger and bigger. Doing something about it is exactly what today is about.
An Australian state bans natural gas in new construction.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The era of global warming has ended.
Great!
The era of global boiling has arrived.
Damn it. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we saw this coming all the way down the road from June. Hottest month ever in July.
Oh, yes. Climate scientists didn't even wait until the end of July to declare it the hottest July in history since record-keeping began in the mid-1800s. July is also the hottest month ever recorded on planet Earth. That's according to preliminary analysis from the World Meteorological Organization and Europe's Copernicus Climate Service.
So not just the hottest July ever, but the hottest month ever recorded on planet Earth.
Yes, and it's also likely the hottest in 120,000 years based on evidence of past temperatures in paleoclimate records. Endless extreme summer heat across the southern United States is now entering its third straight month. NASA forecasts a hotter than normal August and September for much of the nation, likely to set new temperature records.
Oh, great.
Phoenix on Monday finally ended its record streak of 31 consecutive days at or above 110 degrees. That's nearly double the previous record set 50 years ago.
So global cooling has begun.
No, that makes Phoenix the first U.S. city to hit 110 degrees for a full month, but likely not the last. An Arizona wildlife rehabilitation facility says it is receiving as many as 120 wild animals a day suffering from the relentless heat. As the northern hemisphere broils, it's winter down under, but Australia is on track to see its warmest winter on record, with Sydney averaging 74 degrees. The South Pole is in deep winter, but scientists say Antarctica's sea ice extent has hit record lows for the satellite era, missing an amount of sea ice equal to the area of Argentina. The increasing frequency and intensity of extreme heat is symptomatic of global human-driven climate change that is fueling these extreme heat waves, wildfires, storms and floods, and more across the globe. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres excoriated world governments for slow-walking the transition away from fossil fuels.
The only surprise is the speed of the change. Climate change is here. It is terrifying. And it is just the beginning. No more excuses. No more waiting for the others to move first. There is simply no more time for that.
Good luck with that, Tony.
Here in the U.S., federal data show that extreme heat costs the U.S. economy about $100 billion a year in lost productivity, not just for workers in typical outdoor industries like construction and agriculture, but also workers in factories, restaurants, and more. President Biden on Thursday announced new actions to protect workers and communities from extreme temperatures, including the Labor Department issuing the first ever heat hazard alert for employers to protect their workers from extreme heat.
It clarifies that workers have federal heat-related protections. We should be protecting workers from hazardous conditions, and we will. And those states where they do not, I'm going to be calling them out, where they refuse to protect these workers.
Yeah, I think he's talking to you, Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Plus, congressional Democrats have introduced the Extreme Heat Emergency Act with a provision to include extreme heat and wildfire smoke as disasters that can qualify for federal emergency assistance.
Good.
Some good news. Canada, the world's fourth largest oil producer, has unveiled a framework for eliminating inefficient subsidies enjoyed by the wildly profitable fossil fuel industry, the first G20 country to act on an international commitment to phase out taxpayer subsidies.
Good.
Climate policy analysts say it is a critical first step, but it falls short because it does allow for government subsidies to the oil and gas industry to use unproven carbon capture and storage to reduce their emissions. And finally, the Australian state of Victoria has banned natural gas hookups in new homes and government buildings starting January 1st, part of a plan to reach net zero emissions in the state by 2045. The Victorian government estimates the change will save households up to $1,000 on their annual energy bills, or $2,000 if they have solar installed, because clean energy is cheaper than fossil fuels.
Sounds terrible. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So hot labor summer in full swing, and as we've been talking about the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors, the strike that they're on, the Teamsters with UPS and the contract that they've got, you're seeing labor actions all across the country. And in New York, the Transport Workers Union of America, TWU, they took out a one-page ad in 3 different newspapers to tell the MTA CEO that, hey, we're serious. We want a fast-track strike action. We're serious about getting better wages, hours, conditions for our members, and this is good stuff. This is the kind of stuff that has to keep happening if we're going to rebuild and revitalize the middle class of this country. That's why I've asked John Samuelson to come talk with us. John's the international president of the Transport Workers Union, TWU.org, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on.
So walk me through what's going on here. What's with the newspaper ads?
Well, without a contract with our workforce at Metro North, 2 local unions comprised of car inspectors, essentially train mechanics and car cleaners, about 500 workers. We've been out of contract for about 4 years. So enough's enough. We're in the NMB process right now. We're in mediation, and we're fighting back. So this is one element of the workforce we have at the MTA in New York. We have the flagship local of TW Local 100, which is the bus and subway workers, where we've just settled our second contract. So we've lapped essentially our locals at Metro North, and we're disgusted by that. And we're going to fight really New York City subway style on the railroad tracks north of the city, in the suburbs north of New York City. And we're going to run a strategic campaign. What you saw today was the first elements, the first salvo of that strategic campaign. We're going to fight politically and every other way we can. We're going to comply with the NMB and the Railway Labor Act process. And in the interim, we're going to run this strategic campaign. We're going to win, and we're going to get a contract.
4 years you've been without a contract? So during the entire pandemic, you guys have been out of contract?
Yeah, essentially during the entire pandemic, these workers have come to work. They've done everything they're supposed to do. And yet these bosses at the MTA have lied to them, scammed them, tried to get them repeatedly to take an inferior contract, a contract that is definitely economically less valuable than what the existing economic pattern is. That's part of what this is about. So as in many places in the public sector, we're dealing with pattern bargaining, and yet the bosses at the MTA and this labor relations oriented machine that we've run into so many times here has seen fit to really to sort of just sort of absolutely totally disrespect their workers at Metro North and on the Long Island Railroad for that matter, where we don't have members but they're in the same boat as us, and come through with an economic pattern that is less than what the prevailing pattern is, and we're fighting back. But there's one other element of this that is incredibly serious. In fact, it's probably more serious, which is they want language from us that says that the contract becomes amendable immediately upon signing the contract, immediately upon ratification of the contract. They want the ability to unilaterally change the terms of the contract if the finances of the employer go south, in the opinion of the employer. So it's absolutely ludicrous, ridiculous language. It's language that we will never acquiesce to, and we'll go on strike and we'll shut the railroad down before we settle for any of those terms.
No, I got to stop you here. I mean, they want you to sign a contract that as soon as you sign it, they can change it. I wish I could get a mortgage company that would allow me to have that kind of an agreement. Yeah, I'm willing to pay you this amount today. We'll sign this contract, but tomorrow I'm going to amend it because I may not want to work overtime, so I'll only pay you half.
Yeah, it sounds like hyperbole on my part. It sounds like a gross exaggeration. The federal mediator thought that as well, and that's exactly what the language says. It's no exaggeration, and unfortunately, they actually compelled a couple of unions to sign that language already. So they're trying to get a beachhead. Fortunately, they ran into us, and we're going to stop them.
Now, would you agree that maybe they're still thinking pre-pandemic kind of bargaining? Because I've talked to a lot of union leaders who think employers still haven't gotten the message, the memo on the new world in which we now live, where workers aren't going to put up with the same, hey, I'm just happy to have a job, that they lived through a period where employers and the community was telling them that they're essential and they're heroes and lots of nice flowery language, no raises, no better benefits, no better working conditions, but some nice words. And now those workers are going, hey, we want to live those truths. We want to be treated with dignity. Are you seeing that kind of dynamic?
I think certainly with that language, there's an element of that. There is an element of that. There's an element of second-class citizenship here involved here as well. The language actually does reference COVID. The couple of unions that they compelled to signed it during COVID, or at least in the end stages of COVID. But so there's a little bit of that. But also in the interim, the labor movement itself and our partners in the trade union movement delivered a huge financial windfalls from them out of Washington, D.C. And furthermore, we delivered financial windfalls for them out of Albany. And the union movement itself has stabilized the MTA budget both in New York State as well as federally for this MTA operation. So in order to demand language that makes the contract amendable it's just kicking dirt in the face of the workers themselves that delivers stability to the budget of the employer. So it's absolutely ludicrous. We're never going to sign it. And what it's doing is organizing their own workforce to conduct strike action against them.
So what can people do to help? I mean, at the end of the day, do phone calls to the MTA, calls to legislators. What's the action? What's the request?
Well, the request certainly in the ad today was to have phone calls to the chairman of the MTA, a guy named Jan Oliba, comes out of the real estate industry. So those calls are happening. We know for a fact that phones are ringing off the hook today. The riders are stunned. They're startled. There hasn't been strike action at Metro North in quite some time, maybe 40 years or more. So these are muscles that neither the workers nor the riders have seen flexed in quite some time. And we're flexing them now. So it's our intention to run this campaign. We don't want to see a strike, but you know the deal. We're gonna continue to build. We're gonna continue to organize internally. We're gonna continue to organize the riders, and hopefully we don't get to a strike. But if we do get to a strike, we're damn sure going to be prepared for that strike, and we're going to win that strike.
Yeah, no, I mean it's as I always say, it's the last arrow in the quiver, but it's got to be there. Even if you don't use it, it's got to be there. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with John Samuelson. John is the international president of the Transport Workers Union. You can check out their website, twu.org, to find out what they're doing and maybe get a look at the ads that they put out. Now, I also wanted to ask you, because we've been seeing a lot of our other union friends in the transportation industry saying that their members have been under not just economic stress like some of your members are going through right now, but also the threats of violence. We've seen, according to my friends at ATU, the Amalgamated Transit Union, they're saying that the number of assaults on bus drivers and transit people are through the roof. Are you seeing the same thing with your members?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the ATU is a sister union of ours. John Costa, the international president, is a good friend of mine. In fact, I have a meeting with him coming up. Might even be next week. I'd have to look at my calendar. It's something that we talk about frequently, assaults. It's something that we work on frequently across the country. And I was the president of TW Local 100 in New York City for quite a many years. And I've developed friendships with the local presidents in New York that have lasted even with me going to the international. And in New York alone, there are weeks where there's 5 assaults against bus operators, both ATU and TW. We work together to face this down. And I think that there has to be solutions. And I do believe that we are going to turn the corner on this collectively, particularly with the TW and the ATU. We're going to win. We're going to achieve results, and one of those results has the potential to end the assaults as we know them, and that is the cockpitting of the bus operators in the front of the bus. So that total, complete segregation of the bus operator, it has to happen. And right now, buses aren't manufactured in that way, and I think with the collective pressure that we are putting on the manufacturers and on the employers themselves, the bus operators, the bus agencies, we'll win. And I think this will be, with this collective approach that we're undertaking, it'll be a thing of the past. And this nightmare will go away. And it's not only the bus operators, actually, the subway side personnel, rail side personnel face the same exact thing. And we're trying to figure out how to insulate our train crews in similar ways.
And how do we pass laws to make sure that when people do engage in that kind of behavior, that they're dealt with appropriately and that there are severe, stiff penalties for this? I mean, at some point, I don't know when we've lost our minds, and I don't know when it became okay to attack a bus driver who's just trying to do their job. But we're in this weird kind of moment, John, and it's frustrating, it's angering, but there's got to be a way out of this.
Well, I'll tell you, we've run into problems in city after city, and just to tell it like it is, we've run into problems with Democratic district attorneys that don't want to lock people up that assault blue-collar workers. And it's freaking outrageous, and it's part of the problems that blue-collar Americans have with the Democratic Party right now. You punch a freaking bus operator in the face, drag the bus operator off the bus. You could be like a 240-pound middle linebacker type dude. You drag a female bus operator off the bus and pummel them, and a Democratic district attorney doesn't want to press charges. And we've endeavored to pass state and local laws raising the penalties against those who assault transit workers, and we still run into the problem of district attorneys that don't want to press charges. And this is a major problem that the TW faces, the ATU faces, and it's something's got to give. And I do believe that there is a blue collar blowback, and anybody who doesn't recognize that is just not seeing the truth for the truth.
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm someone who says you have to protect workers. I don't care what political stripe you are. You protect people when they go to work. You negotiate contracts, you enforce contracts based on wages, hours, conditions, and standing up for people in the workplace is just a no-brainer for me. And it's sad to hear that there are people out there who won't take these folks off the street. I mean, you've got to start making examples of some people.
It's absolutely insane. If you assault a bus operator in Manhattan, in New York County, try getting the district attorney in Manhattan to prosecute a violent freaking criminal that assaults one of our bus operators. It's very difficult, and it's a very bad spot to be in.
So what can we do? I mean, ultimately, because I think we pass laws, but if you're not going to enforce them, what's the point in passing laws?
Right. So we work it, and we have groups of workers constantly meeting in New York and beyond with district attorneys, constantly arguing our case, constantly explaining that the will of working people is not to be subjected to violent assault. And that violent assault is of working people, transit workers and beyond transit workers, they gotta get segregated away from normal society. If you punch somebody in the face in the course of their work, you don't deserve to be walking among us. That's just the way it is.
That is just the way it is. And it's a good thing they got folks like you fighting for their rights. John, I appreciate you taking some time for us. I wish you the best on the Metro North deal. I hope you'll come back and give us some updates as this continues. Again, I hate to see people go on strike, but when you have to, one day longer, brother. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. John Samuelson, president of the Transport Workers Union, TWU.org, the website, if you want to take a look at the work that they do. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, it's interesting John brings up the assaults and not being prosecuted. And this has been a knock against, honestly, a knock against Democratic district attorneys or attorney generals or all this stuff. The idea that they don't want to be seen as locking people up. Look, I don't want to lock people up either, unless you've done something wrong. You know, at the end of the day, if you're beating up a bus driver who's just doing their job for no reason, if you're beating up people on the bus, that's not good for society. You need to remove those folks. You need to move them away. You know, it's important that people learn how to, and I know the pandemic kind of had a lot to do with this. We don't know how to be around others yet again, and there's an adjustment period. But there is no reason to hit a bus driver. I used to ride the bus all the time. Have I had some really bad bus drivers? Yeah, there've been some obnoxious people. You're on the bus to get from point A to point B. That's what you do, not to beat up the bus driver. And this is one of those weird things, because the idea of quarantining off the driver, cockpitting the driver, as John Samuelson said, is not new. This is something that I've talked about in the past, probably, it's got to be at least 10 years that we've been saying, well, it makes no sense. You know, because I remember I used to work at night in downtown Cleveland, and I would have to take the bus, from, one place to the Rapid under the terminal and then out to, the suburbs on the Rapid. And I remember, the person who's operating either the Rapid or the bus is on that thing alone in the middle of the night in not some great areas. And you go, how do you protect that person from, now the money is completely secure because you drop the money in the little thing, it goes down into a box. Good luck figuring out how to get that. So, robbing the bus doesn't happen. Just beating up the bus driver and taking what they've got, I guess that happens. So for me, there's no reason not to be locking people up who do these kind of things, especially against working people. I mean, why? Why would you? It makes no sense. But I do want to hear your thoughts. And look, John's not wrong. There are some district attorneys who don't want to get on the wrong side of the messaging. Look, I'm someone who says we lock far too many people up for a lot of stupid things, a lot of low-level drug crimes. You go, really? Possession? Seriously? Why are we locking people up? But beating up bus drivers? Yeah, you should go away for a while. Something. I want to hear what you think. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Now, earlier, I talked a little bit about our good friends, the Republicans, the ones who happen to really hate working people. And as I went through some of it, I didn't get to where I wanted to earlier, which is the fact that their budget process is about gutting all of the regulatory oversight, about gutting any of the protections that workers have through the federal government. And look, Biden, with his announcement on the heat issue, that's great. Problem is who's going to enforce it? You know, it's great to have, you know, the federal right to those kind of protections, but who do you call? Where do you go to get help? Answer, yeah, good luck. And Republicans understand that. What they really understand is if you can starve it, if you can starve government to the point where you can drag it in the bathroom and drown it, i.e. Grover Norquist, then that's let Democrats pass all the laws they want. If there's no cop on the beat, what does it matter? And I remember a hearing a couple of weeks ago. The Republicans on the House Education and Workforce Committee were yelling at the acting Labor Secretary, Julie Su. Evidently, they claim she's not doing enough to protect our children in the workplace, which is one of those things that's just kind of laughable because it's Republican states who are moving to loosen child labor laws to ensure that we put more children into the workplace. Think of the goofy picture with Sarah Huckabee Sanders with the big cheesy smile with all the kids around here who looked miserable. Think about that for a second. But they're going, you're not doing enough to keep our children, particularly migrant children, from doing these dangerous jobs. And you go, I'm sorry? Republican Jim Banks of Indiana called it the biggest humanitarian crisis in American history. And what's Jim Banks's solution for this? Well, he's going to yell at the acting labor secretary, not actually pass a policy to ensure on the federal level we make sure that kids aren't in dangerous jobs. No, can't do that. It's about grandstanding. It's about the flowery words. Remember what I said. Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do. And what they're doing is they're loosening restrictions. They're loosening regulations. They're making it easier. And understand, it's not going to be my kids that are going to be the ones who are the ones going to be abused in this system. No, it's not going to be your kids probably. It's going to be those migrant kids. You know, as I said yesterday, I took the photo of Sarah Huckabee Sanders and those kids and used the I think it was called Playground AI or something, or Playground Image, and it's the same one that the Asian woman used to make her photograph look more professional, which turned her white, blonde hair and blue eyes. So I said, hey, make this child look like a child laborer. And oddly enough, they didn't look anything like the kids in the picture, because it's not going to be, even AI knows it's not going to be our kids that are going to be the ones doing this. Now understand that these are the same people who, they care about the children, don't want the children to get hurt at work, but want more of them in the workplace. And oh, by the way, the people who do the child labor enforcement, the Department of Wage and Hour Division that does this, the folks who keep track of child labor violations, Republicans want to gut their budget by almost 30%. So while when the cameras are on, saying, we care about the children, especially those children that are working. Oh, see how much we care. We're talking about how much we care. But in their budget, in the thing that actually does something. Now remember, budget doesn't have a snowball's chance of passing. It's a messaging vehicle. They want to gut the organization that really does keep track of child labor. They want to gut that by 30%. Now think about it, where we are. You got states, like Iowa, like Wisconsin, like other places saying, we're going to lose. Arkansas loosening the restrictions, putting more kids into dangerous jobs, and they want to fund the organization that oversees it at almost a third less. So as number of kids go up, the inspectors go down. What do you think is going to happen in that scenario? I don't know. I'm not a genius, but I gotta think the abuses going to go way up because there's no cop on the beat. Republicans hate working people. Just look at what they do. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1939. That was the day that the Hatch Act was enacted. The law was named after Senator Carl Hatch, a Democratic senator from New Mexico. The Hatch Act limits political activities by federal employees. One of the reasons the law was passed was due to allegations of corruption by the Works Progress Administration. The WPA was a key program of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal plan to put people back to work during the Great Depression. But critics of the WPA alleged that the program was being used as a form of political patronage, and that the jobs were exchanged as a way to secure votes for the Democratic Party. Although an investigation found no conclusive proof of the allegations, Congress decided to act to define what was appropriate political engagement for a federal employee. Except for the president and the vice president, all federal employees and employees of the District of Columbia must follow the Hatch Act guidelines. Under the Act, federal employees cannot use the authority of their job to interfere with an election. They cannot be a candidate to a public office in a partisan election. They cannot participate in political activity while at work or while wearing a government uniform or driving a government vehicle. But the Hatch Act does not completely stop federal employees from participating in our political system. If they are off the clock, federal employees can still attend political rallies, contribute money to candidates, campaign for candidates, and help register voters. Ensuring the individual rights of free speech and elections free of corruption can be a difficult balancing act, especially for the thousands who call Uncle Sam their boss. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Senator Tom Cotton, a far-out right-winger, is to good public policy what a boll weevil is to a good cotton crop. Totally destructive. But he is politically candid. Rather than disguising his racial bigotry, for example, Tom flaunts it, as he did last month in an open letter to the retail giant Target. While the senator is usually a devoted corporate-hugging Republican, he lashed out at Target for business policies that he furiously condemns as racially discriminatory against white people. What popped Tom's cork was the chain's pledge to increase the number of black people it hires by 20%. Holy Dixieland, wailed Cotton. Hiring more of them means fewer jobs for us white people. He insisted that Caucasians had the right to take any and all of Target's jobs. Interestingly, Target's gesture to racial equality was made 3 years ago, with no peep of protest from the now infuriated Cotton. What changed? The GOP's dog-whistling tune, the new politically correct line of anti-black racists, even parroted by today's Republican Supreme Court, is that all efforts to provide racial fairness and balance are, get this, illegal racism against the white majority. So Cotton is just scurrying aboard his party's latest anti-black bandwagon, proclaiming that whites must be protected from racial progress. Not only are Tom and his ilk threatening teachers, librarians, and local governments for promoting equality, but also brand-name corporations that they claim to be woke. That is, not solely focused on profits, but also promoting a little attention to America's need for social justice. This is Jim Hightower saying, ironically, Tom's clique piously claims to be devout Christians. But guess who was supremely woke? Jesus. Tom Cotton needs to review the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus declared that those who hunger and thirst for justice are blessed.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So recently, the nation celebrated 58 years of Medicare. And you know, I was thinking about this, and my grandmother, when she was at the end of her life, I've said this before, had you threatened to take Medicare away from my grandmother, she would have beat you with her walker, because she understood how important that was. And her generation was really the one that built it. I mean, they were the ones who got it passed in the law. They were the ones who fought year after year to make it better, something that you would want to defend and pass on. And yet here we are in this moment where there are forces doing everything they can do to, well, privatize and profitize, but here to share some thoughts on the big anniversary, 58 years of Medicare. And what we can do to reclaim it. I've asked Carmen Rhodes to come talk with us. She's a senior advisor with the Be Hero Group. BeAHeroFund.com is their website. Carmen, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show, Rick.
So 58 years is kind of a big deal. I mean, and you stop and think about where it started, not so great, to the point to where, when my grandmother was still walking, like I said, she'd have beat you with her walker and you just talked about taking it away.
That's right. Your grandmother and my grandmother fought really hard to have this rock solid guarantee of health care that many generations of Americans have relied on. And I know I want it to be there for me when I retire and when I need it. I want it to be there for my kids when they need it as well.
Now I'm counting down the years actually, because the only thing that at this point in my life, I'm 56. The only thing that is keeping me from retiring and wanting to go do something else that I want to do is healthcare costs. You get rid of healthcare costs, I'm gone. And I think there are a lot of Americans who are in the same kind of thing, where you give them the option to have some health security. They're going to pursue other passions. They're going to pursue other lines of work. And that would be a good thing, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And too many Americans don't have that guarantee of health care.
So I want to start with, what is the Be a Hero Fund? What do you guys do?
That is a great place to start. So we are a national healthcare advocacy organization that was co-founded by Adi Barkan. Adi is an activist. He was diagnosed with ALS about 6 years ago at the age of 32. And he has really used his experience navigating his ALS disease and navigating the healthcare system to raise up and lift up what's broken about our healthcare system. And so Adi has really been a champion of kind of confronting elected leaders at different key moments, of being a really solid champion for guaranteed healthcare for everybody. And he founded Be a Hero to be a national organization that really lifts up the voices of patients and people who are harmed by the healthcare system, people who are closest to the pain, people who are navigating insurance claims denials or medical debt, or who can't get the home care that they need because they can't afford it or because there's not enough of an investment in it in this country. So we are a national organization that is really working to unify the grassroots base to ensure that we all have health care.
And it seems like, for me, it's such a simple thing that, in the wealthiest country in the history of civilization, probably at its wealthiest moment, that we have so many people who are health insecure, and you throw everything else in there. People go to bed hungry, people are homeless, and the healthcare problem. There's so many things that we should be working on. And I started today's program off by talking about an old interview with Carl Sagan and Ted Turner, where he was saying, look, we just don't spend our money right. Other countries choose to prioritize health, education, infrastructure, other things. We just don't seem to do that, do we?
That's right. We could not agree with you more. And that's something that Adi and our other co-executive director, Jamila, say a lot, that this is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Why is it that people are going without the healthcare that they need? It's because we have prioritized corporate tax giveaways. We've prioritized corporate profit over getting people the things that they actually need. And that's something that we're really working to unify a base of support to fight back against.
What do you say to the person, though, Carmen, who says we just are, we're a wealthy country, but we can't afford to give everyone health care. We can't afford to give seniors eye and dental and hearing aids. We can't do that. We can't give all this stuff away.
What I would say is that the money's there. We spend more money on health care per capita than any other country with socialized medicine, as some would say. And so the money is there. And I know in just a moment, we're going to talk a little bit more about Medicare, and the money's there to pay for every single person on Medicare to have vision, hearing, and dental. But it's how we're choosing to spend that money. And that's really where Be a Hero is we want to sound the alarm about some of the issues that are and some of the problems that that we're facing with Medicare.
I mean, here's the thing. My problem with all of it is you're right. We're spending more money than anyone in the world and getting worse outcomes. We've got more people who are filing bankruptcy because of medical debt. We've got more people who are stressing to the point of, of illness because they can't afford the care that they need. The math just works out. If you had one giant pool, it makes sense to me. Because what we have done in this country, and I'm sure you'll agree, is we've taken the most expensive people out of the private market and we've taken it out as the taxpayers. In the first 5 years and the last 5 years is when most people use all of the health care they're ever going to use. They are the most expensive, and we have taken them out so that the for-profit people, the people who line their pockets, they just take the people who are healthy enough to get jobs and show up to those jobs. It seems to me we could put everyone in one giant pool and it would be much more efficient and it'd be much cheaper.
We could not agree with you more. That is very much where we're coming from. And we, one of the things that I wanted to highlight for your listeners is that very thing that you're talking about, how people who are relatively healthy get cherry picked, that is what's happening in Medicare. So Medicare was created 58 years ago. And about 20 years ago, Medicare Advantage was created. We like to call it Medicare Disadvantage. So this is really private insurance companies that said, we can provide a better product for a cheaper price. And our leaders in Washington bought that. And they said, okay, we're going to see what you can do. And so over the last 20 years, private insurance companies have taken over more and more percentage of the Medicare market. And just a couple of months ago, we actually crossed the threshold where more than half of all people on Medicare are now on these Medicare Disadvantage plans. And what we know about these plans, and if you talk to, most of the people that you talk to, if you talk to somebody who's on Medicare and they say, oh, I'm on Medicare Advantage, if they say, and I really like my plan, they usually follow that up with, but I'm a relatively healthy person. So most of the people who are choosing to be on Medicare Advantage, Medicare Disadvantage, are people who are relatively healthy, or they're people who are being forced onto these plans, which is something else.
That's a whole other thing, like the public sector workers in New York.
Yes.
But here's the thing. Every plan is great until you need it. Every plan is wonderful. I love every plan until you try and file a claim and have to go through all of the nonsense and the hurdles and all of that. And here's the thing. You brought up that they just passed the half threshold. I now expect, and you can help me if you disagree, I now expect a renewed call for Medicare for all, but coming from the Chamber of Commerce and the right. But it won't be traditional Medicare. It won't be that stuff that my grandmother would have beat you over. It'd have been this privatized kind of stuff where you get a shiny card, you get a nice card and maybe a gym membership. But if you ever get sick, shame on you.
That's right. And I actually think that the health insurance companies would be perfectly happy to endorse Medicare Advantage for all, because they are making a killing off of Medicare. They are making so much money. And we know that, Humana, one of the biggest providers of Medicare Advantage, they're one of the big 7. They recently announced that they are going to get out of employer-sponsored health insurance, and they're going to pursue this market because it's so lucrative for them. It's guaranteed income. We know there are many reports that are coming out. A recent report from USC came out that shows that these plans are overpaid up to $75 billion every year. And so that's money that is going out from Medicare right into the pockets of these corporate executives. And they are doing it in really sneaky ways. So there's this process of upcoding where these health insurance companies will actually go into everybody's medical records. This happens a lot too when there's an acquisition, of a new provider network. They'll go into everybody's medical records and they will make people look sicker than they actually are. They'll add codes so that they can get more money out of Medicare. So this is an incredibly lucrative business for them. They have figured out how to make a lot of money off of this public benefit program that so many of us want to be able to rely on, but that they are absolutely perverting. And in many ways, I mean, they're destroying the brand. They're getting to call themselves Medicare. They're getting to call themselves Advantage. And as many of our elected leaders who are really like being turned on to what a huge problem this issue is, they're saying it's neither Medicare or an Advantage. It's private insurance. And so it comes with all the problems of private insurance. It comes with the delays and the denials of care. It comes with the, the prior authorization hoops that many folks face when they're trying to get care from their insurance. It comes with the limited provider network. So we've met people along the way as we've embarked on this campaign. We've met people who are fighting cancer who don't have providers in their network that are within like a driving distance to their home. It is really a problem.
But this is what, again, this is what our geniuses in Washington have brought us. And I remember this during the Bush years. Remember, these are the same people who brought us, prescription drugs where we're Americans, damn it. We pay full price. We don't negotiate for drugs. It's quite remarkable when you look at all of the good ideas of the conservative past and the corporatist past and how bad they turned out to be. Because this is, again, I remember, being on the air talking about, how bad this was going to be. And it has proven itself to be every bit as horrible. But here's the thing that they are able to do that Medicare isn't. I flip on the TV and I see ads every day. Hey, you could get this, or hey, look how wonderful this is. We have a prescription drug plan, a gym plan. We've got all this great stuff, all these bells and whistles and shiny over here. Look at the shiny stuff, to sell people on the fact that they're getting something better. And what it is, to your point, it's a screw job.
Yes, that is it. That is incredibly deceptive. And that is something that I know lawmakers in Washington want to take on. I mean, the truth is, we need to fight back against these private insurance companies that are taking over Medicare. But the other side of this is that we need to fight to improve Medicare. So, and part of our vision and what we're hoping that lots of people will jump on board and start to champion as well, is that if we could claw back these overpayments that we are owed, that the $75 billion that is just going to line these insurance companies' pockets with more profit, we could claw that back. We could provide vision, dental, and hearing to everyone on Medicare. We could lower the Medicare premiums. We could look at doing things like an out-of-pocket cap for Medicare so that people can just choose Medicare, so that they don't have to worry about trying to choose one of these shiny plans that is maybe going to, screw them over in the end. They can just choose Medicare, and it can be the reliable health care that generations of Americans have relied on.
So what do we do on this? Because, here's the weird part. I've talked to people who don't know the difference. Yes. I talk to people who you go, what do you have? Do you have Medicare or do you have a Medicare Advantage? They don't know. They think they've got Medicare. How many of the people who have these Advantage plans or disadvantage plans, as you call them, how many of these people actually think that they've just got Medicare?
A lot of people do, and it's really a problem. And that's where they, unfortunately, sorry. I'm so sorry. Excuse me. Sorry. I got my kids. My kids are getting ready to go to bed. It's almost bedtime here in California. So people don't know that they're on these deceptive plans until they get really sick.
Right.
And the truth is that for many of us, as we get older, unfortunately, we will face a serious health situation, and we will need that coverage. And unfortunately, more and more people are discovering that these plans are not there for them. And it's something that we're really worried about, that this is still, this plan has been around for 20 years. It's really within the last 5 to 7 years been like a freight train of people joining. And so as this population that's been joining ages and people do have more health needs and they need the care, we are very worried that it's not going to be there for them. And that's why we are trying to sound the alarm to say, this is an urgent need, because the delays and denials are already happening. There's more and more reporting about it. We know that people don't know that they're on these Medicare disadvantage plans. And so we need to sound the alarm with our elected leaders in Washington. We need to sound the alarm with President Biden, because there's a lot that his administration could be doing executively to protect people who are on these plans. And then there's a lot that a Congress that actually wants to get something done. There is so much that they could do to be dealing with delays and denials of care and really investing in Medicare in a way that just makes it better for all of us and makes it so that we can all just choose Medicare.
No, I think of my grandparents and their generation. Medicare at the beginning wasn't very great. It wasn't very good. Didn't cover much, wasn't great. They fought to make it better. Every couple of years, they were fighting to make it better. It was an issue that was central to them, and to see us go the other way is really angering. The website, beaherofund.com, lots of information there on how we can begin to reclaim our Medicare. Carmen, I appreciate you taking some time. I know you got kids you got to get to bed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Stop and think about it for a minute. Go back to the Bush years. Think about the damage that the Bush administration did to working people. Now, again, I keep coming back to this frame, and I wish it weren't true, but Republicans hate working people. Look at what they've done. Look at what they've done to Medicare. Oh, no, we're going to privatize it. Competition's good. Competition's good. What we know is Medicare has X amount of dollars. It's not an infinite sum of money. And we know that these private insurers are overbilling, upcoding, doing all this stuff. In fact, there was just a story not too long ago, I believe I did talk about it, where you have these insurers who are training home health aides. The people who come and help maybe do your dishes, or kind of straighten up, or help you take a bath, or do whatever, so that people stay in their home. Because what we know, people staying in their home happier, cheaper, live longer. We know that. Studies are conclusive. You throw them into a nursing home, it's much, much, much more expensive. It makes people not so happy, and their lives are shorter. That's the reality. So if you keep people in their homes, it's better. So what we do is we send people to help them out. Now you're training those people to go, oh, what? You've got this problem? Oh, well, we should report this back so we can now code you as having all of these ailments. Because what's happened is you no longer get to go to a doctor. I remember the days, here, come back with me in the Wayback Machine, if you will. I remember being able to go to a doctor visit and the doctor going, hey, how are you doing? What's wrong? And I could go, well, my elbow hurts, my knee hurts, I got the sniffles, my butt itches, whatever. And they would go, okay, let's talk about that. Let's see how we can make you better. Oh, no, not today. Not today, no. Each one of those things, as I was told, if I had all of those ailments, would be 4 different appointments. I'd have to keep coming back. Or they'd code them as 4 different, treatment things so that they could charge you appropriately. Now, some are going to say, but, hey, if you had a car that was broken and it had 4 turn signals out, you'd have to pay for those. Yeah. But, here's the deal. A doctor's job is to keep you healthy. And when you have these kind of checkups and you have these kind of things, I don't know, I'm still struggling with the brave new world. And I know very soon it's all going to be done by AI, so it'll probably be moot at that point. But what it's all about is getting more money out of the insurance companies. It's about squeezing more profit out of a system. It's not about people anymore. It's not about care. Hospitals aren't run to keep people healthy. They're run to make money. And that's perfectly shown by the fact that most hospitals you see are run by MBAs and not doctors. We need bean counters. You know, the ones who are going to squeeze the quarter till the eagle screams. This is where we are. So when I look at Medicare and the privatization schemes that's going on, and I talked about this back in, was it 2006 when Bush did this? The fact that we don't negotiate for prescription drugs, but these Advantage plans can because they're not Medicare. And they set this up, and again, brilliantly, so that over time, it would eventually take over. They knew what they were doing. This argument of choice, oh no, we need choice for competition. They know what they're doing. It's the same thing with education. It's the same thing with everything. We've gone, no, we're gonna have choice. We're gonna have competition. It's when they put those words in there, it's all about screwing the public sector. It's all about stealing as much profit and as much money from the program as possible. And we're seeing that with Medicare. Are we surprised that when you put a profit motive in there that someone's going to take a huge amount of it? No, it's not surprising at all. So the question then comes back to, how long before we have Medicare disadvantage for all? Because remember, Republicans were against Medicare for all. They're completely against it. Socialism. And I have said in the past, now understand, I've said in the past, I think we do need to have one giant pool. I think we need to, and I don't care if it's public or private. So I wouldn't be necessarily against the idea of a privatized Medicare for all, as long as there are strict parameters. My problem is I know Republicans are always going to screw those up. So that's where my hesitancy is. But I still think you have to have one pool. Everyone's in. Everyone pays into it. It'd be much cheaper, much more efficient. We would cut down on a whole bunch of stuff. But it's not going to happen until the profit people, till the money people can see a way to line their pockets. Now, I had a friend years ago. I haven't seen Jerry in a number of years. And I'm not going to say his last name because I don't want to get him in trouble. I don't think I'd get him in trouble. He's retired. He worked for one of the big insurers locally. They've got a color. It's one of the big, it's the red, white, and the other one. This is probably 10, 15 years ago. He said the biggest mistake that they made, the colored place, was not getting involved in Medicare from the beginning. He went into this whole thing about, and this was right around the time, I guess this would have been right around the time of Bush's disadvantage plan. He said, the insurers should have gotten on board immediately and ensured that government didn't guarantee it. They should have made sure that it was a privatized plan and everyone would get one, and then argue cradle to grave kind of thing, so that you would solidify the government paying the policies and ensuring that you had a constant pay model, and you would have the ability to do a bunch of things that progressives and people like me would want, but you could do it at a sizable, tidy profit. And he said that was a great mistake because the insurance industry fought tooth and nail against Medicare because, people who could afford the insurance as seniors were really lucrative, and they would charge rates that were just outrageous. Most seniors couldn't afford it, which is why the government stepped in. So, he was talking about the reality of that policy moving them to where they should have gone back in the 60s. And we are now here. We're now in that position where the privatized insurance companies, I know they're not for profit. Yeah, good luck on that. Where they're now going to take over the market. And because they've sold us. They've conned us. I've seen the ads. They're slick. But it's up to us to reclaim it. I want to hear your thoughts. How do we stop the onslaught? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.